5 o'clock local time. The sea is almost unnervingly calm. No whitecaps, no meaningful swell, just a sheet of steel gray water reaching all the way to the horizon. On the flight deck, an FA-18 is locked onto the catapult, canopy sealed, engines quiet. Around it, the deck crew are frozen in place, hands resting on chains and chocks, waiting for an order that has not come. Deep inside the carrier's Combat Information Center, a new symbol appears on the surface display. Then another, then 3 more. 5 surface contacts, nearly at once, approaching from different bearings but following the same overall pattern. No AIS. No reply to the first radio calls. Their speed is increasing. The watch officer says nothing at first. He does not have to. Every screen in the room is already telling the same story. These ships are not simply passing through, they are closing in. The range drops in steady steps. Every few seconds, the numbers refresh with cold mechanical precision. Bearings narrow. Closest point of approach calculations update, then update again, each one tighter than the last. Up on the bridge, the carrier stays on course. No turn, no correction. The helmsman keeps the wheel steady, eyes forward, grip tight enough to turn his knuckles pale. This is how these moments begin. Quiet, controlled, deceptively calm. At 5:18, long-range optics finally sharpen the first hull into view. Angular superstructure, a distinctly military silhouette. Gray paint that seems to swallow light instead of reflecting it. Russian naval vessel. That confirmation moves through the ship in seconds. Not shouted, not dramatized, logged. 5 Russian ships, each maneuvering on its own, all drawing closer. On the flight deck, a yellow shirt raises a clenched fist. Flight operations stop completely. Chains are checked again. Safety locks are confirmed. Nothing moves unless it absolutely has to. Below deck, the carrier's sensors begin working harder. Radar modes shift. Electronic support systems listen more carefully, filtering emissions, cataloging pulses, counting rotations. Every system is fully awake now, yet no alarm sounds. That matters. By 5:20, the spacing starts to look deliberate. 2 contacts ease toward the carrier's port side, offset just enough to restrict lateral movement. 2 more settle to starboard, matching speed with near-perfect precision. The 5th drifts ahead, angled slightly across the carrier's bow. It is not a textbook formation. It is pressure turned into geometry, designed to force a reaction. The carrier gives none. Speed remains steady. Course remains unchanged. From the outside, that might look passive, maybe even exposed. Inside, it is anything but. In CIC, operators watch wake patterns, throttle shifts, tiny rudder corrections. These are not casual crews on a routine patrol. These are trained professionals making deliberate moves. The distance keeps shrinking. 6 nautical miles. 5, 4.5. Radio calls go out again, calm and professional, using standard maritime phrasing in English. Then repeated. Still nothing. No acknowledgement, no correction, no explanation. That silence says more than any answer could. On the bridge, the captain studies the plot without changing expression. No raised voice, no dramatic command. He lets the systems speak because the systems are already doing exactly what they were built to do. Every Russian ship is now positively identified. Hull numbers resolved, class profiles matched, sensor signatures recorded in real time. Nothing is wasted. Out on the port catwalk, sailors lean against the rail and watch the approaching silhouettes. No one gestures, no one points, they simply look. At this distance, another ship can be felt before it is heard. A low vibration through the deck, a subtle change in the air, steel pushing through water with intent. At 5:23, one of the Russian vessels alters course by only a few degrees. It is a small adjustment, almost casual, but the effect is immediate. The CPA drops below acceptable margins. The geometry tightens further. Inside CIC, the report is made, not shouted, logged. Contacts closing to unsafe distance. That is all. No adjectives, no speculation, just fact. Above, the carrier's island throws a long shadow across the flight deck as the sun rises higher. The light does not soften the scene. It reveals more of it. Antennas, mounts, the unmistakable lines of ships that are no longer pretending to simply pass by. 5 Russian ships, 1 U.S. aircraft carrier, and the gap between them is still closing. Out here, no one wants to make the first move, but everyone knows exactly where too close begins. They are almost there. At 5:24 local time, the spacing is no longer incidental. 2 Russian vessels hold steady off the carrier's port quarter, far enough apart to mirror any speed change without crossing directly into the wake. Their bows ride low, engines pushing harder now, water peeling away from their hulls in clean arcs. To starboard, the second pair does the same. Ahead, the 5th ship drifts laterally, never crossing fully in front of the carrier, but never clearing the bow either. Just close enough to make the point impossible to miss. You are boxed in. Inside the Combat Information Center, the surface plot keeps updating. Colored vectors stretch and collapse with every refresh. Every bearing change is logged. Every throttle increase is time-stamped. No one guesses at intent. At this range, intent is measured. Now even small mistakes become dangerous. Wake interference, rudder authority. The subtle pull large hulls exert on one another when steel and water come too close. The carrier's speed stays exactly the same. That is deliberate. Slowing invites more closure. Accelerating raises the stakes. Holding steady denies both. On the bridge, the officer of the deck keeps his gaze fixed ahead. His voice remains even as he relays each update. Calm is a message too. Below, the escorting destroyers begin to reposition. Not dramatically and not in a way the naked eye would immediately catch, but enough to widen angles and protect maneuvering room. They do not surge forward. They do not fall back. They move like pieces on a board, visible only to those tracking the entire picture. At 5:26, the range drops again. 3 nautical miles. That number carries weight. In international waters, 3 miles is close enough that any mistake can turn serious in seconds. A delayed engine order, a misunderstood rudder input, a wave hitting from the wrong angle. The Russians know this. That is why they are here. Radio calls go out once more, clear and recorded, standard bridge-to-bridge procedure. Again, no reply. Instead, one of the starboard contacts inches forward until from certain angles, its bow lines up with the carrier's island. Not a collision course. Not safe either. On the flight deck, sailors shift their footing without thinking as the carrier's hull moves through unsettled water. The deck feels different now, tighter, more alive. Vibrations move through the steel in patterns that do not feel routine. Fuel lines stay closed, aircraft stay chained, nothing moves unless it must. Overhead, the sky is empty. No jets, no helicopters, just open air and 5 gray hulls pressing in closer. Inside CIC, the electronic warfare team keeps listening. Russian radars appear in intermittent sweeps, not targeting radars. Not yet. Surface search patterns, narrow beams testing angles, watching reactions. Every emission is captured, every frequency stored, no outward reaction follows. This is not the moment for theater. At 5:28, the forward Russian ship slides a few more degrees inward. Its wake starts to overlap the carrier's bow wave. White water crosses white water in patterns that were not there moments earlier. The margin narrows again. Inside CIC, the CPA updates. Too close. On the bridge, the captain studies the plot. He says nothing at first. He lets the numbers settle, lets the geometry speak. Then, quietly, he gives one instruction. Maintain course. That order moves through the ship without noise. No alarms, no dramatic acknowledgments, just execution. The carrier does not turn. That changes everything. From this point forward, any further closure will not be mutual. It will be intentional. The Russian ships continue pressing in, slowly and methodically, close enough now that hull details can be seen with the naked eye. Antennas, bridge windows, crew silhouettes moving along the rails. No weapon stations appear visibly manned. That, too, is deliberate. At 5:30, the carrier's sensors reach full clarity. Every ship's motion is now predictable. Every option has been mapped. The squeeze has reached its limit. 5 ships, 1 carrier. Distances measured less in miles now and more in seconds. Everyone involved knows the next move will decide whether this remains pressure or becomes something far more serious. At 5:31 local time, the carrier makes no signal. No horns, no flares, no sudden turn. From the outside, it looks unchanged. Still driving forward on the same heading. Still cutting a steady path through broken water. But below decks, the ship has already entered a different phase. Inside CIC, the tempo shifts, not faster, deeper. Sensor feeds begin layering over one another. Surface radar, air search, passive electronic surveillance, stabilized infrared optics. The picture is no longer merely accurate, it is complete. Every Russian hull now has a digital shadow. Speed profiles, turn rates, propulsion signatures, even minor oscillations caused by sea state filtered and understood. This is not guesswork. This is total pattern awareness. On the bridge, the captain stands motionless, eyes fixed on the plot. He is not scanning the horizon. He is watching the data because the data tells the truth faster than eyesight ever can. At 5:33, the first escort destroyer makes a move so small it is almost invisible. A few degrees of rudder, a slight increase in speed, enough to widen the carrier's maneuvering options without looking aggressive, enough to alter the geometry without announcing it. A second escort mirrors the move on the opposite flank. Together, they create space. Not a barrier, an option. Above, the island blocks the early sun and throws a long shadow across the deck. Sailors move only when they must, boots striking steel softly and with purpose. No one runs, no one rushes. Discipline is visible in stillness. At 5:35, a helicopter powers up aboard one of the escorts. It does not lift yet. It simply comes alive. Rotor wash kicks salt spray across the surface before it settles again. A reminder, nothing more. The Russian ships answer in subtle ways. Half a knot less here, a slight bearing change there. They feel the shift. They always do. But they keep pressing. Inside CIC, analysts correlate emissions. Russian radars cycle through modes, adjusting pulse repetition, testing resolution at closer distances. Every change is logged. Every emission becomes a fingerprint. This is the part most people never see. The confrontation is not only between hulls, it is unfolding inside the electromagnetic spectrum too. Quiet, invisible, relentless. At 5:37, the carrier's systems complete the picture. There are no blind spots now, no unknowns, no ambiguity in intent or capability. 5 ships, 5 tracks, 5 sets of limits. The advantage is no longer theoretical, it is mathematical. On the bridge, the officer of the deck reports distances and headings in the same flat, even voice. Tension adds nothing. Precision does. The captain gives a single nod. The carrier continues forward. At 5:39, the nearest Russian ship edges inside a boundary every professional mariner understands without needing to name it. Not marked on any chart. Not printed in any manual. The boundary where steel begins to influence steel. Wake patterns overlap harder. The water between hulls churns, pushed and pulled by competing mass. This is where mistakes begin, unless they are prevented. Then the helicopter lifts. Not fast, not dramatic, just enough to clear the deck and settle into a controlled hover off the carrier's starboard quarter. Its sensors turn toward the nearest Russian hull. Lenses steady, movement smooth, no visible weapons. But the point is not threat. The point is presence. Inside CIC, the live feed appears instantly. Bridge windows, deck movement, crew positions, helm activity. All captured, time-stamped, geo-referenced, evidence. At 5:41, the geometry shifts again. The Russian ships hesitate. Not all at once, not dramatically, just enough to register. A fraction of a knot reduced, slightly wider spacing, a delay where movement had been synchronized before. Subtle, but real. The squeeze stops tightening. The carrier never altered course, never raised its voice, never broke discipline. And now, without a single warning shot or shouted command, the balance begins to shift from proximity toward control. Because out here, silence is not weakness, it is leverage. And the leverage is beginning to work. At 5:42 local time, the nearest Russian ship changes course again. Not away, but inward. Only a few degrees of rudder, yet at this range that is enough to matter. Its bow angles slightly across the carrier's projected path. Its wake cuts into the carrier's bow wave instead of running parallel. Water collides with water. Inside CIC, the update appears instantly. The vector bends. CPA recalculates. Unsafe. No one says the word. They do not need to. Every person in the room sees the same number drop below the line professionals trust. On the bridge, the officer of the deck calls it out in the same controlled tone. Contact maneuvering inside safe separation. No emotion, no accusation, just fact. At this distance, collision avoidance becomes a matter of seconds. Hydrodynamic forces start behaving in ways no smaller ship can ignore. The carrier's mass displaces water with enormous force. Pressure builds, suction pulls. Steel begins influencing steel. The carrier does not turn. That choice locks the situation in place. Any further closure now belongs to the approaching ship alone. The helicopter shifts position, sliding laterally to keep the maneuvering vessel centered in frame. It drops slightly, not in a threatening way, only enough to sharpen the angle and remove doubt. The message is quiet, but clear. We see you. Inside CIC, tracking officers mark every parameter. Time, bearing, rate of turn. Every change is preserved. This is no longer posturing. This is the line. At 5:44, the Russian ship presses even closer. Its bow wave thickens. White water rises higher along the hull as engines compensate. From the carrier's deck, sailors can now see people on the opposing bridge clearly enough to catch movement. Hands on rails, heads turning. Too close for pretense. The escort destroyers answer, not by rushing forward and not by crossing bows, but with precise, measured movement that opens the carrier's options without driving the moment higher. One slides slightly ahead, another creates space astern. Not a wall, a framework. Inside CIC, the geometry stabilizes just enough to prevent a chain reaction, but only if the closing ship corrects. Second stretch. The Russian ship holds its line. Then, at 5:46, something changes. Its speed drops. Not sharply, not enough to look like retreat, just enough to alter the math. The wake thins, the pressure eases. CPA starts climbing again, inch by inch, not over, but shifting. The helicopter holds steady, sensors locked, recording every movement with perfect clarity. On the bridge, the captain watches the numbers rise back towards safer margins. He says nothing. He does not have to. The ship can feel it. At 5:48, a second Russian vessel off the starboard side adjusts too, widening slightly and opening more lateral spacing than before. The formation loosens. The squeeze starts to breathe. Still no radio reply, still no statement. Just steel responding to pressure it can no longer sustain without consequences. Inside CIC, the watch officer updates status. Contacts easing separation. Again, no commentary, just observation. The carrier remains exactly the same. Same course, same speed, same silence. At 5:50, the forward Russian ship finally commits to a full correction. The bow swings outward, moving away from the carrier's projected track instead of across it. Its wake peels off cleanly. The moment passes. No collision, no alarms, no escalation. Just distance returning to where distance should have been all along. One by one, the other Russian ships follow, widening their spacing. The earlier symmetry breaks apart. The pressure geometry dissolves. On the flight deck, a few sailors exhale before realizing they had been holding their breath. No one cheers, no one points. Professional calm stays intact. Inside CIC, the logs keep filling. Every second of the maneuver preserved, every decision frozen into data. The turning point did not come with a loud warning. It did not come with a shouted order. It came from restraint held long enough to force a decision. And when that decision finally came, it was not the carrier that moved first. It was the pressure that gave way. At 5:53 local time, the distance holds. Not opening dramatically, not snapping back to comfort all at once. Just enough space to restore predictability. Enough room for steel to move without interference. 5 Russian ships still remain on the plot, but the geometry is no longer the same. The tight symmetry that defined the squeeze is gone. Bearings open, vectors drift apart. The formation that pressed now only observes. Inside the Combat Information Center, the shift is unmistakable. CPA calculations stabilize, turn rates normalize, speed changes flatten into routine patterns. Pressure has become observation. The carrier stays on course, it always does. On the flight deck, the freeze ends quietly. Yellow shirts lower their hands. Chains receive one final check. Aircraft remain secured, but the deck breathes again. Movement resumes with the same control it had before, picking up exactly where it stopped. No announcement is made, none is needed. Below deck, systems ease back towards steady-state monitoring. Not off, never off, just less intense. Sensors remain alert, still listening, still watching, still recording. Because encounters like this do not end when ships drift apart. They end when the record is complete. At 5:56, the helicopter returns to its deck. No spectacle, no urgency. The rotors slow, the sound fading back into the ship's constant hum. The sensor feed is archived immediately, stored alongside radar tracks, emission logs, and maneuver profiles. Evidence becomes record. Record becomes reference. On the bridge, the captain remains where he has stood for the past 40 minutes, watching the surface plot settle into something familiar again. Contacts present, distance maintained, risk reduced. Only then does he step back. Not because the moment is over, because the moment has been managed. Outside, the Russian ships hold position at safer ranges. They do not leave. They do not close in again. They simply remain there, visible reminders that the encounter happened and that it ended without incident. That outcome is not luck. It is discipline under pressure. No shots, no threats, no dramatic statements at sea, just professional restraint applied with enough precision to deny escalation. At 6:02, routine operations fully resume. Internal communications shift, not to casual, but to normal. Reports are finalized, timelines verified, logs cross-checked, every second accounted for. Because what matters now is not what almost happened. It is what did not happen. The carrier continues its mission unchanged. Its course still points forward, not because it faced no challenge, but because nothing forced it to yield. Out here, control is not measured by who reacts first. It is measured by who never has to. The Russian ships eventually open their spacing even more, drifting into looser positions that no longer cut across the carrier's projected path. They remain present, but no longer intrusive. The message has been received. Not announced, not broadcast. Simply understood. As the sun climbs higher, the ocean looks exactly as it did before the first radar contact appeared. Calm, flat, indifferent. But under that surface, something new has been added. A data point, a reference, another entry in the long record of encounters where proximity tested professionalism and professionalism held. No medals are handed out, no public statements are made. The carrier does not mark the moment as a victory because victory would require confrontation, and confrontation was avoided. Instead, the ship records what happened, keeps what it learned, and moves on. That is how moments like this really end. Not with noise, not with spectacle, But with distance restored, control maintained, and one truth reinforced again. Out here, restraint is not weakness. It is the sharpest edge a Navy can carry.